Hey y'all, it's Taylor from Tattooed Teacher Plans. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Today is going to be a kind of different video for me. I've had this request quite a few times over the past few years, and I've just kind of avoided it because lesson planning is so personal. It's kind of like regular planning. It's like your own style and what you feel like is best for your classroom and your kids and your methods. And I've always kind of like respected that, and I didn't really want to step on anybody's toes. But I got the request again recently, and I really think now is the time to do it. I don't think this video is going to be very long. I'm just going to kind of go through my method. Again, this is just really personal. How you choose to lesson plan. Some people need a lot of detail. A lot of people need very little. It also depends on your experience. I've been writing lesson plans for 15 years now, and they're definitely different from when I first started. I really just need a few things, and here's what I include. So I need a clear lesson objective, and this is based on my state standards. I am in Texas, and we use the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or the TEKS, and that's what I base my objectives on. I really pay attention to that verb in the TEK in order to form my objectives for each lesson. I also include those TEKs so that I can go back to them. They're numbered with like sub letters, and so having those listed in my lesson plans really helps me, especially from year to year as I improve my plans. But also, like the day before, I can just double check if I am on the right track. The other things that I include in my plans are a clear opener and a clear closer. I call them my preview and my closing. Some people call the preview bell work, but just something for the kids to do at the beginning of class. And then the other things I include are my questions that I want to be sure to hit, and then also the materials that I need. And in my plans, I link them so that I can go to them quickly when I'm setting up everything in my Google Classroom, and also just for me to be able to find things really quickly. So I'm going to take you through my process from my pre-planning my unit through the actual building of my plans and like breaking down and unpacking all of those standards, all the way to linking the materials and getting them into my Google Classroom. So you'll get to see everything. I didn't want it to be like super long or super detailed because I think, again, everyone has their own style, but I did want to share just like an overview of how I do it. So let's get into it. So before we get started, I want to make a point of saying that I have a lot of freedom at my school. We have basically 2 rules when it comes to planning. Well, maybe 3. 1, we have to follow the TEKS. Those are our state standards, and we have to, by law, follow these standards. Also, the other thing is we have to follow our year at a glance. Now, I don't have it in front of me, but it's basically this report, this Lead Forward. I get this, Lead Forward is a really, really great site if you're in Texas, but they do everything for you. So you have to follow the order of the TEKS, basically. So you have to use these. You have to follow the order of the TEKS, and the third thing is you have to turn them in every week. So those are basically the only rules we have. So in saying that, we just have a lot of freedom. So just keep that in mind as I go through this, that there are just not a ton of rules that I have to follow, and I have just a lot of freedom to do what I want. Okay, so my first step is I go to my TEKS and I go to, this is the snapshot of my TEKS, which follows the year at a glance. So I start with these 2 things. I like having this, by the way, these are like almost brand new copies. I have to print new ones every few months because I just use them so much that the paper gets worn out. But I start here, and really this is what guides my, like the start of my instruction. And I used this year. I just have started using this, but I've used this process. I just actually made this handout for my teachers at school, part of just instructional coaching and stuff. And this has really helped me to organize everything a little bit better. So I've done this process, just not in this particular format. And I think this has really been helpful for me and for the teachers at my school. So here is what a unit ends up looking like for me. So I'm about to start my second unit. and which is classical civilizations in world history. So I start with my year at a glance and my standards here. And luckily, this report sets aside which are my priority or my readiness standards and which are my supporting standards. So that's really helpful for this process. So here is this is the whole thing, the classical civilizations. It's a very large unit, and it's broken down into Eastern and Western classical civilizations. I tend to put them all together, trying to connect the different civilizations to each other and not kind of compartmentalizing. So I still am following my year at a glance, but just kind of in a different way. Same time period though, at the same time. So first I put in my priority teaks, which are my power standards, my priority standards. These go up here. And then these are my supporting teaks. And I like to mark my spiral standards. So the spirals are the ones that repeat throughout the whole entire year, because sometimes I like to hit spiral standards for a certain purpose during a certain time period. And sometimes you just may not have, the time for them. I have a note down here that talks about, supporting teaks are great if you can hit all of them, but if you're not ready to grade them yet, or if it's a building block for something you want to emphasize later, then you don't necessarily have to take a grade on these things. So we also do standards-based grading at my school, and this has helped narrow down a lot of assessments. So I added a column here this year that says ways to assess each of these standards, and the big ones have multiple ways to assess them, but it just gives me an idea of what I want to do. So I really do love doing document-based questions using primary and secondary sources to put together information using a question. So there's ones that I really love to use often. There's also things that I've done that I know are really effective. So I put those in first. And then I work through how else do I want to assess these things. The spiral ones are usually looped with bigger standards. And these definitely repeat over and over and over again. So these really kind of just support, that's why they're called supporting standards, but they really support these up here. So I really pay a lot of attention to my priority teaks, and then I work these in where I can. This is a big unit. It's a long unit, and there's a lot of assessments happening. I'm not grading all of this, though. I'm just grading things that are really, really important to U.S. history, which is what they take the next year, and the things that are important to just being a good citizen, as well as big history things that I think that they need to know. So this is very, very helpful in just setting up and organizing my unit. This is just such a lifesaver, this little document. It has every unit in here, and it just really helps me to not only organize my teaks, but also see them really easily and clearly. This is on my desk all the time. And then I've got, of course, just the full list of my standards here, because sometimes I like to see them in order and how they're organized. So all of the history teaks are listed first, and then it goes into the special topics, and then it ends with the skills. So these two together work really well for me. This helps me organize my teaks. Now, once I have everything organized and I have chosen the assessments that I want, which, by the way, I'm really not into tests. It's just not, over time, it's just not been my thing. I prefer like projects or assessing along the way. So I don't plan on doing an assessment I have an assessment, but it's not going to be a test or anything like that. Okay, so now we're going to shift to my big plans for the entire unit. Okay, so once I get my plans kind of organized, how I want to assess each of the standards, then I figure out how I'm going to organize them into actually daily plans. I'm not thinking about the details yet. I'm just thinking about grouping things together and what I want to cover throughout the unit. And I do that on Post-its on my monthly calendar in my EC Teacher Lesson Planner. So let me show you August, because August is pretty much finished, obviously. So I have the major topic here. This is good for me to just see, like, at a glance what's going on. But if we look ahead, they're on Post-its before I actually put them on the page like this. And this helps me to move things around really easily. It helps me to organize them in the correct order that I want. And it helps me to just visualize how long everything is going to take and, you know, where I'm going. Because this changes quite often. I decide I want to switch something over, or I want to group something else together in a different way. And before I write it down, it always goes on a Post-it. So here's the week that I just finished that I need to actually write these things down. So I'm going to show you how I do that. It's very simple. I mean, I just write the topic or the big thing that we're doing, and then just do a little color swatch behind it so that it kind of stands out. So I only write them down pretty much a week ahead of time. So here is the week coming up, and so I felt comfortable writing these down, but these, who knows when things might need to be redone or moved around. So like I added this last week. I want to do a redo day where they have a chance to redo anything they want, along with some individual conferencing with each kid. So when I worked this in, I had to kind of move things around. This is something that I just kind of fall back on when we need a break. We watch an episode of this History Channel show, but I kind of just leave that off to the side. So here is where we are at for September. And these are the things I've already done, and then these are the things that are coming up, and then these are kind of planned but movable. So this system is something that I have tried for the past 2 years, and it's really helped me to plan ahead but not make it permanent yet, because you just, things change, especially this year and last year and the year before. So this is really just a way for me to plan ahead without doing too much ahead of time. Okay, now we're going to shift to how I do my lesson plans, like the actual day-to-day plans. So let me show you what it looks like when it's in my planner itself. So here is just half a week, obviously, because we started on a Wednesday, but I used 2 columns of a template that I got from Teachers Pay Teachers. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'll show you what the printout looks like and how I get it into my planner. So here is what I use for my lesson plan template. It is a Google Slides presentation that has been kind of flipped to represent a full 8.5 by 11 page. And then it's been set up with some text boxes here to write in. So I only use the first 2 columns of this template, but each of these are usable. And I've actually, if you look over here, I've actually deleted the other half of the page. So it really should have more slides than this, but I have deleted all of them. Let's go back to the beginning so you can see what it looks like when I've actually done plans in it. So here's the first day of school, and here is the next week of the school year. And you'll notice here that I have everything linked so that I can use all of the things that I want to use and find them very, very easily. So everything is here for me to add to my Google Classroom right there. I just love linking everything because it's just really efficient for me. So here is what a blank page looks like. So here is September 20th through the 24th, and you'll notice the left side page only. So I use this as a template. I copy all of this and I put it into all of my boxes so that they're all the same. They all have the same information. So on the first column, it's always objective, preview, and closing. And then on the right side, it's always my standards, materials, which I link, and questions or topics that I want to be sure to hit. So here is this week pretty much ready for me to type on. So when I start to actually type in, the first things that I do are my objective, and I do my assessment, which is my closing, or if it's something that we're leading up to, then I think about that if it's like a multi-day lesson. So after the objective and the closing, I usually go into what do I want to do to start the lesson, which is my preview activity. And then underneath that, I can put in more things on the list. So if we look at this week here, you can see we were finishing up a project to finish up unit 1. And then also I was conferencing with them. And so I linked my conference form that I use for conferencing with my kids. And then here is a normal day. So we've got a preview, a little bit of notes and discussion, and then we do a closing together. Usually their closing is on their own, like on this day here and here. So it's really just simple, but it's super straightforward and efficient for me. It's just evolved into this, and it's how I like it, which I think that is something that you really need to focus on, is what works for you and your brain and how you teach. So after I finish, like, let's say this box here, that is when I list in the materials that I need for this assignment and then link anything that I make. So this process takes me more than a minute, to actually pull all of my materials and even make materials from scratch or build them, like say in Actively Learn or in Edpuzzle, and then I'll just link them here in my actual plans. I also really like to link any videos that I'm using so that I can find them quickly, and I can make sure that they are, like, the link is working and it's live still from year to year if it's a video I want to reuse. I also like to put in if the kids need their notebooks. We use them pretty rarely, but we do use them from time to time, and I need to be sure to mark that on the board for them. And then, of course, just having everything linked in here is really helpful when I get to putting everything in Google Classroom, which is the next thing that I do. So here is what my plans look like when they are all printed out. And all I do is cut around this gray line with these 2 columns. And then once I have this in one piece, by the way, then I paste it in right here. I just use a acid-free glue stick and it works perfectly. It's a permanent one, so that's good. But it just lays flat, and that's really nice. So this actually, I print 2 copies. So this one is going to go into my file of all my plans, just so I have an extra copy. And then, of course, I have this in my Google Drive as well. But it's just nice to have them in here and just ready to go right there for me. This also travels home on the weekend for me, and so I have it if I need it. Something that's really nice about having them in here is that I have my standards listed right there on the page, and I can go and grab this packet of my state standards and look up something really fast. I'm starting to memorize them, but I have to look them up pretty often. I mean, there are a lot of them, and you really have to pay attention to the verb that is listed in the standard in order to hit it correctly. So things like locate, analyze, interpret, summarize. These are all very different from each other. So I need to be able to look at the verb and make sure that my kids are doing the correct level of what they need to do. So I always have this next to my plans here, but this is just really nice because I can make notes on here too after the lesson is over, like a note that it totally bombed, or do something different, or this didn't take very long, or add something else, or just whatever comes to mind. Also, I will, like even months later, I will think of something or run across something that I want to do the next year, and I can come back here and put like a post-it note over it, or I can also just write a little note here so that I remember it, because I keep my planners. Here is mine from last year. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. So here I made a note that it only took half of the class time and we just spent the rest of the time working on our project. And then this time I also wanted to plug in an Edpuzzle instead of what I used to do with this lesson. And so that's just really nice to see. I don't look at this that often when I'm making my plans. I glance at it and see what I did the year before I make the plans for the next year. But I'm usually trying to do some different things. Often the objective will be the same though. So this is handy to have regardless of what activities I have planned, because I know I can look and see, what did I do? Did that work? Can I do it again? Or if it didn't work, do I have a note for what I want to do instead? It's just really nice to have this just as a reflection piece. So once I get my plans into my actual spread here, then I can have this next to my my computer at work, and I can actually put in my materials because I have everything listed here and linked. And so it's really easy to just open all the links and put everything in. So let's look at the previous week to see how I prep for the next week. So I just make a list here using my plans to see what do I need to add to my Google Classroom. So I make a list with some little boxes in the order that they go in, and then I will put those into my classroom. So let me show you how I do that. So the first thing that I do when I am going into my Google Classroom to link everything in here for my kids is that I clean out my this week's lesson topic. This topic stays at the top of my page all the time, and it's just really easy for my kids to find things for the week in here. So at the end of the week, I move anything out of here that needs to go. Now we haven't finished this yet, so I'm going to keep it here for the following week. And then when we're done with it, I will move it down into my Unit 1 topic, which is the last thing for that Unit 1. But everything is here for them to use when they need it in order by date. So let's go back up to this week's lessons. So for conferencing with me individually, they just have a little form that they're going to fill out for me before we do that. And then it goes into my plans. So if you had seen on the previous screencast, when I showed you my lesson plan template, you could see all of these things on the list of things that were linked. Also, the things that are linked on my actual paper lesson plans. So I just put them in order, and I put them by date. And I like to put them in the order of the class. So we start with a preview, then we get into the materials, and then we're going to use this Padlet for our activity that day. Then we've got a preview for the next day, the materials, the closing, preview for the next day, materials, and closing. So the kids know my system and how it works, and they can find things really easily when they need to go back to them as well. So I like to have everything drafted and scheduled before the week starts. That doesn't always happen, but I do like to have things done ahead of time. I would really love to be 2 weeks ahead of time, but it's just not sustainable for me. Plus, with things moving around, I have to update the dates and all of that. So I really just keep it week to week. So all of my materials are posted in my Google Classroom. My plans are done. I'm ready for the week. So I hope that was helpful for y'all, and you got kind of a quick overview, snapshot, whatever you want to call it, of how I plan. It's definitely different for everybody. Like I said, it's something that you find your way through, and every district has like different requirements. Some have no requirements at all. Some have a template that you use. So I really just have kind of found my style, and it works for me, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit that notification bell if you want to be notified of my videos. I will leave my teacher and teacher planning playlist down in the description if you want to see anything else. I occasionally do a vlog, and I do share updates on my teacher planner from time to time. So I hope that y'all have a wonderful school year, and I will see you next time. Bye.